Oh, hey everyone. Guess
It's go
what?
time.
It's me and Eric LaRocca. Hey, I'm Mother Horror, co-owner of Nightworms and reviewer of horror fiction. And with me today is my friend and special guest, Eric LaRocca.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Sadie, thank you so much for doing this. I love Nightworms and I love you and I love everything that you do. So thank you so much for being here and helping me celebrate the release of this book.
Yeah, well, we would not miss it. We are huge, huge fans of your work, and so many people are huge fans of your work. I personally I mean, it's well deserved and it's understood, but I cannot get over the success of your last book.
I
Things
know.
have gotten worse since we last spoke. It is insane. You guys, audience, I am not exaggerating when I say that I have never in my life seen an indie book hit this hard.
Mhm.
Like, what are we at now? 20,000 sales?
Yeah, it's 20,000 over, I think over 20,000 copies. Yeah, for things have
Yeah.
gotten worse.
Yeah, and I just first of all, I have to say about this book is Nightworms helped reveal the cover.
Mhm.
So when I first saw this in my Nightworms email, I was like, what the fuck? Like, that is a crazy cover. I
I
mean,
know.
I don't know how it hits for everyone else, but dang.
Yeah, no, that cover art is just, I think it really goes to show how a good cover can really make or break a book.
Mhm.
Like a compelling, dynamic cover can really strengthen your release and, just get you in the right hands of certain readers. So, I mean, hats off to Kim Jacobson for designing that amazing painting. Um, I'm just so happy that that ended up being the cover art for the book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably one of the first times where I gasped when I saw I was like, "Oh,
I
I'm
love
sure
that.
everybody had that reaction too. I mean, it just really, and then after reading it, obviously, it's just so appropriate.
Oh yeah, no, it's perfect. I mean, when Sam Richard, the owner of Weird Punk, told me like we should start thinking about like cover art and everything, um, I went on Instagram and Twitter and I was looking for really interesting artists that I could tell, were like weird and surreal and, had that vibe going on. And I
Yeah.
came across Kim's work and that painting especially just kind of, it just like blew me away. And I was like, that has to be the cover art.
Yeah, I totally agree. Hey, the comments is just blowing up with special friends. I mean,
Yay.
hello to Ashley, hello Johan and
Hi,
Tim,
everyone.
Carmen. I saw Ross Jeffrey was staying up to hang out with us for a little
We
while.
love Ross.
Joshua, Justin.
Amazing.
Hi
One
to
of my favorite people.
I know. So great for you guys to show up. And what are we actually celebrating today? Like, what's the big party?
So we're celebrating the release of my debut fiction collection, The Strange Thing We Become and Other Dark Tales.
I know. I'm so excited. I love
So
this cover too, actually.
yeah, this cover was amazing too. I mean, this was really thanks to Sam at Off Limits, who's the owner of Off Limits. She, got in touch with this artist, Leopard Moth, and the artist just came back with these two really striking illustrations, and we ended up picking this one. But I just feel like I'm really lucky. Like I've got really great covers on these
Yeah.
books. I feel like it's a good sign.
Yeah. Actually, I want to talk about that really quick because I know that two of the stories are from this book that was going to come out last year. Is
Yes.
that correct? Yeah. So
Correct.
this is called A Bright Enchanted Suffering. And this actually blew my mind. So the stories that are in here will be, or two of the stories that are in here will be
Yes.
in this new collection. So I'm really excited to start talking to people about that as they engage with the strange thing we've become. Um, So I'm really happy. This is like a collector's item because this will never be.
Yeah, it's super rare, and it's got like beautiful illustrations in there too.
Yeah. Oh, can I show them or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Show
Yeah,
them
let's
all.
look at these. This one right here is like, there we go.
So beautiful. That was illustrated by Dave Dick, who's an um, amazing artist. He actually designed the covers for Josh Marcella's books, Scratches and Severed. So yeah, he's just amazing.
There's a couple people who are talking about your titles. Ashley mentioned it, and then Ross just mentioned it too. Like, how do you come up with your titles?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, for me, like, titles are super, super important. I feel like a good, compelling title can really grab a reader. And I don't know, I've always kind of been against, not that I'm against, but I've been kind of steering away from more like generic the and then noun, like it's
Yeah.
for me like that doesn't excite me when I see a book.
Yeah.
So for me, like I do write some poetry sometimes. I have a collection out called Fanged Dandelion. A lot of times, yep, there it is. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll kind of just be in a state of mind where I'm like, all right, I'm trying to like conjure a title, and I'll just kind of maybe vibe off like some lines that I want to write with poetry. And sometimes, a whole concept will sprout from just like a line that I come up with from like a line from a poem, you
Yeah.
know? So for me, like the title process is like its own thing when I'm writing, and sometimes that's almost the first thing that I do before I set out to like outline or plot what I'm going to work on. Like I'm the type of writer that I really need a title in order to work on something.
Oh, that's interesting. So the title actually does kind of come first. It doesn't,
The title usually always comes first for me.
you're not pulling it from something inside.
Right. Yeah. Like things have gotten worse since we last spoke was actually, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that title came from a series of monologues that I wanted to write when COVID first hit. And I wanted to write like a series of monologues based like around quarantine and like illness and sickness and death. And I came up with that line, things have gotten worse since we last spoke. And then those monologues never really came to fruition. But I thought, that's a really interesting line. That could be like a really great title. And then I just started like brainstorming around that title and what I could possibly bring to it with like a story.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of where it came from, just from that one line.
It's cool because it's one of those titles that you can't say without having any kind of emotion behind it. Like
Mm.
I was a big drama nerd for 4 years in high school, and then I did some in college too. And I actually told Haley Piper this too. And who else was I telling? I don't remember, but some other author too, that I wish that we had had access to stuff like this, especially things have gotten worse when I was in high school, drama and also college, because we could pull from kind of monologue driven or POV stories
Mm.
and make scenes from them.
Oh,
And
for sure.
oh my
Yeah,
God, that would have been such, like, just to perform things have gotten worse would be so amazing. And then like Haley has a story that I would have loved to just do like a monologue off of.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's just so, and like when you say things have gotten worse since we last spoke, like that lands a punch.
for
Even just
sure.
the title.
Yeah, it's a catchy title, and it's funny you bring up like drama in general because I kind of began my writing journey as a playwright. So I initially started writing plays when I was really young, and I was lucky enough to have some theaters in my hometown put on some of the plays that I wrote. So whenever I approach any work of fiction, um, I'm coming from that like theatrical background. So even the way, like, if you look at the structure of Things Have Gotten Worse since we
Yeah.
last spoke, it's almost written like a play. Like,
Yeah.
it's got 5 acts, it's got those 5 different parts, and it's got like kind of all the beats that I would expect from like a stage play, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, totally.
So that's where I come from, especially writing fiction now, is, like my theater background.
Yeah, and that's why I think it just, like, resonates to people who have, like, a cinematic brain.
For
Like, I was
sure.
just trying to explain, like, how reading feels to my husband, and then I write about it sometimes in my reviews. But at first, when you're first just kind of picking up, like, an author's way of narrating, you're kind of, like, reading, and you feel like you're reading. But then
Mhm.
eventually you just disappear into those pages and it's just this like weird movie in your brain.
Right. It's so
And
weird when you really think about it. Like, you stare at a page filled with words and you like basically hallucinate, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
You
you
have
are,
like
you're in another place.
yeah, it's so true.
I love this. Ross is like, things have gotten worse since we last spoke. Play. Now that's some crazy shit, and I can see that working well. Same. Like
Yeah.
I would love to perform that actually.
I mean, you can even perform it like as it's written, like, you just need 2 actors to kind of
Yeah.
go back and forth. Like the dialogue is kind of already there. Um and we are like I have written a screenplay for the book, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it would be cool.
That would be so cool. Tell us more about like for the strange thing that we become in other dark tales. Tell like the audience and like readers kind of like what they could expect in terms of um I mean because this is definitely a specific like brand, you know, but like do you carry this kind of shocking brand into this as well? Like are people just going to be like, "Oh my god, that ending," or, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I wanted to actually put out a tweet the other day, but then I thought, you know what? I can't really control how people react to my work. I'm just gonna let it fall how it does. But um, I always did kind of want to set expectations for this release because it is very different than Things Have Gotten Worse in that it's more like somber, muted,
Mm,
um, more thoughtful horror, almost like Michael Wehunt. Like I love
mhm.
his work.
Yes.
It Greener Pastures is
Greener
like one of my
pastures.
favorite
Me
collections.
too.
So it's more like in that realm, whereas like Things Have Gotten Worse was like this uh like kind of cornucopia of like debauchery and like perversion. But like the strange thing we become is more thoughtful and like reflective and just I would say like sadder. It's just like a sad horror book or a horror collection. Um, so I think readers can expect that. I think they can expect themes of grief, which I talk a lot about in my work, trauma, identity, how we perceive ourselves, how others perceive us. Um, Also, intrusive thoughts are really big for me. Like that, I've suffered from them, and I definitely like to kind of explore that. Things that I'm somewhat familiar with in my fiction. So that's kind of what readers can expect, and they can also just expect a different format. Like Things Have Gotten Worse was like epistolary and written through emails and chat logs. There is one story in The Strange Thing We Become that's written as like internet forums, like pages from like a chat discussion or forum online.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's like very just like lyrical prose, I think.
Yeah, and that's fun to have I like those when those modern elements of like emails and texts and stuff. I've come to really enjoy those aspects of some of the stories. Um, and then also, like you were saying, the two stories that I know that are in there from A Bright Enchanted Suffering, the horror is like mm, introduced, I
Mhm.
want to say, through like a third party instead of between like two people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
Like
definitely.
unexpected horror.
Yeah, it's like horror in everyday
Yes.
situations
Yes,
or
like a mundane situation turned horror.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Hey, there's a question here that I thought was cool. Um, were any of the stories in the new collection that took place in Connecticut based off of places you have lived and or been?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a I grew up in Connecticut in a small town called Kent, which is in like the northwest corner of the state, and it kind of almost touches the New York border, but it's a beautiful little town and it's got this gorgeous main street with all these little like mom and pop shops on it and whoops. Um and it's pretty popular among like New Yorkers and like people that come up on the weekends, really wealthy people. So I have this fictional town in my fiction that I've named Henley's Edge, which is kind of based off of Kent and like how I perceived that town when I was growing up, and like a lot of the characters in some of my pieces kind of react to certain aspects of the town and like the people in the community the way that like I did when I was growing up. And um yeah, like I have a novella called Starving Ghosts in Every Thread that's going to be published with Stygian Sky Media, and that is basically the town in that is Henley's Edge, and that whole book is very like very much from my history and like my traumas growing up. And so I definitely weave that sort of thing into my fiction constantly.
Yeah, that it feels like familiar also.
Hmm.
You know, like there's one of your stories that's set in a park, and it was weird how it felt like a park I had been to. There's a park here in Tacoma called Wrights Park or Wright Park, yeah. And I was visualizing that park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it could be anywhere, but you kind of like put yourself in that situation and you apply your own um, you know,
Context, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I love to do in my fiction, is to make it somewhat familiar so that people can identify with, the plight of the main character and what trauma they're going to go through.
Well, that's why I think it's so important too that queer horror is just really starting to get like a lift in the community,
Hmm.
because I think it's important for people to see themselves in horror and in all genres. And like we were talking today while we were packing Nightworms, I was talking to my daughter, and she said something that really struck me. We were talking about Adventure Time and how Princess Bubblegum and Marceline have a gay relationship, and she was like, "I love how it just kind of came out of nowhere too, and it wasn't like, oh, somebody had to come out of the closet or
Hmm.
like." There had to be like all this drama surrounding the fact that those two women were together. It just kind of was like happening and they were falling in love, and that's the universe that that creator wanted to tell. And there wasn't any bullying or anything, like there wasn't any disapproving parents or whatever, because that's the universe they wanted to see and tell
Right.
for this queer narrative. And I think that it's important too, like that we can interact with the LGBTQ community through their stories the way they want to tell them, like without
Right.
expectations and bringing anything into it other than just enjoying it for a story that needs to be told.
I think that's so valid. And I mean, that's definitely what I love. That's what I love about horror fiction, is that, queer narratives are now being really recognized and venerated. I think like writers like Haley Piper, um, Joanna Koch, like just really great writers that are writing transgressive and thought provoking pieces. I really feel like queer horror is having its moment, and I feel like
Mhm.
it will continue
Yeah,
to have its moment,
yeah,
future like down the line. I think we're gonna see more. I think And even, like mainstream books like The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, like that featured a gay relationship.
Yep.
Um, so I think we're eventually going to see more of that in mainstream fiction and film. At least that's what I hope.
And that it's super normative and that there's a lot of it. Like,
Mhm.
like it doesn't have to be the centerpiece. Like just even watching Mayor of Easttown with Kate Winslet, her daughter was in a gay relationship, but they didn't emphasize it. It wasn't the main part of the story. It's just her daughter is in a gay relationship because people
Right.
are.
Right. It's like a normal thing. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't need fanfare and it doesn't need all this, fanfare surrounding it. Like it just is what it is. And you can react to it however you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, we're coming a long way from like TV Guide announcing that there's an episode with a gay kiss. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
I remember that. It was like, "Oh, these two men are going to kiss on screen for, blah, it's going to,
Mhm.
and it's just like we're so much further
We're
away.
so past that, thankfully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank God.
Yeah.
Let me see. Here's another question for you. Wanted to ask how much of yourself you put into these stories. Are any of them based on real life experiences or metaphors for them?
Yeah. So, some of the stories in The Strange Thing We Become, they're not like literal representations of things that I've been through, but they're definitely um they're things that I've flirted with in like thoughts or like certain things that have kind of happened around my peripheral. Like so for example, the story Bodies Are for Burning, that deals with a character who suffers from intrusive thoughts about burning things, and she's tasked with taking care of her sister's infant daughter, and
Mm.
she's deathly afraid of doing something to harm the child while the child's under her care.
Ooh,
Um, so that's something that, I mean, I've never been in that position where I've had to care for an infant, you know, uh, you know, but I've definitely suffered from intrusive thoughts where I've been like, what am I thinking? Like, why am I thinking this?
yeah,
I've had those moments where I'm like, is this normal? Should I be concerned?
yeah,
So I've definitely suffered from that. And so a lot of times, like my fiction will just be, uh, like a worst case scenario. Like I'll think, what's the worst thing that could happen if I acted on this impulse or if I like thought this thing. So that's kind of where that story came from, in that it just was like, it sprouted from my interactions with these intrusive thoughts that I was having. And then there are a couple other stories that deal with grief. Um, we've all lost somebody near and dear to us. So I've just kind of taken that and, made it horrific. But even more horrific than it
yeah.
actually is.
I mean, thank God for grief horror, though. I mean, like Ashley and I talk about it all the time. Like, you have Laurel Hightower and Chad Lutzke
Two of my
John
favorites. Yeah.
Bowden. Yeah,
Yeah.
just writing very dark, very sad, very somber horror that deals with grief and motherhood and love and
hmm
loss. And it's just like, it's a safe way for readers to like reconcile that shit in our heads. Like
Yeah.
we all think about like the worst, and then to read a story about somebody going through the worst is just, I mean, it's oddly comforting.
It's super cathartic, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's super cathartic to write, um, to explore those themes, those horrible things that happen to us, and you know, I think it's a great thing to be able to write about grief and what harms us, what hurts us, what keeps us up at night. I definitely think it's helped me in a lot of ways come to terms with a lot of things about my own identity.
Mm, yeah, that is really cool, Eric. Um, just wanted to show you this love message from Ross.
Oh, Ross.
He is in a totally different time zone. Ross lives in the UK, but I mean, it's really cool. Eric and I were talking backstage about the Stygian Sky Media family of publishers and or of authors working with our publishing company. But yeah, we have some really exciting stuff coming. Ross has a trilogy that's going to be released and has like tie-in covers that all match and stuff. And it's just like,
It
woohoo,
looks so
exciting.
good.
I know.
Yeah, it looks
I'm
amazing.
excited. Yeah, and then Eric and I got to work together to like pick a cover for I Wait for You in the Dark, which is
Hmm.
coming soon from Stygian Sky Media.
Yep, and that's going to be 2 novellas. So it's going to be my first novella that I published, Starving Ghosts in Every Thread, and then a new novella that's never been published before called Devilment.
Yeah, which I got to read, and it's so hard to like beta read or pre-read like all of these fun things and not be able to talk to anybody. It's like my
I
favorite part is like
know.
talking about it.
I know.
It's fun. Um, Elizabeth Elizabeth is just the cutest reader.
Aw, thank you.
Aw. Oh,
Yeah.
and we have another question. Thank you so much for these questions. It's so great. Last question from me. Was Maud inspired at all by Saint Maud, or was it unrelated? I thought it was interesting both dealt with burning.
Yeah, so I wrote Bodies Are for Burning. I think I wrote that like March. I wrote that right before the pandemic happened. So like February, March 2020. But at that time, I think Saint Maud was announced. So there's a character in um, Bodies Are for Burning that's named Maud, and I named her after the character Saint Maud. So definitely they're related.
I haven't watched that movie. I think I've shared this like a million times, but visual horror is a totally different animal for me. So
I totally get that. It's hard. Yeah.
yeah, it's just different. Like, I mean, the visuals that like an author can put into my brain are scary and, but there's kind of like a cap on it. Whereas like
Well, it's
visual,
because you're more like in control, you
right?
know, you're like in your own head and you're thinking, all right, this can be as scary as I want it to be, in a way.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you're watching a film, it's everything's presented for you.
Yeah. You just have no control over what you're going to be shown. And then those linger long, long after,
Yeah,
you just lay there and you like think about certain scenes like over and over again.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Justin's here. Do you know Justin?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Justin's
I love
great.
Justin.
Yeah.
Um, it's cool to see some of my patrons here. We need to do a patron show
We should.
where we don't talk about books. We just talk about like other fun things that you do. So
Yeah.
like, I'm sure you're passionate about like a million other things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd be down for that. Absolutely.
Yay! You'll definitely get that on there. Like, what are some things that you do in your off writing time?
Um, I do like draw sometimes, not like very often. My boyfriend is like an amazing like painter, like illustrator.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think like what else I do that's like interesting, like that we could do a show about.
Well, you love fashion, I can
I
tell.
do. I love like fashion. I love like shopping. I do love shopping.
We all love shopping.
Yeah. We could do like a Patreon show like about shopping.
We totally could. Ashley and I are like the worst enablers about book buying. Like, I literally need more books. Like, I need, a slap in the face. Like, it's just, I have too many books and I'm
Mhm.
never going to read them all. My,
Same.
my bookshelf actually broke. Like, I put too much weight on it, doubling books up and making too many stacks, fell apart, need a new bookshelf. Like, I'm a mess.
No, I totally feel you. I'm the same way. Like I'll just buy like I have a huge TBR pile and I know I need to get to certain books because I have to like blurb them.
Yeah.
Um, but I just like keep buying more books. I don't know why.
Well, it's just like it makes us happy, so who
Yeah,
cares?
exactly.
Hi, Chad. We love you.
Oh, hey, Chad.
And then here's a question for you.
Oh,
What are your favorite horror books, especially ones that inspire your work?
so I would have to say it's such a. I feel like people have come to expect this from me, but I have to say Clive Barker is just a huge influence for me. I love Clive. I love everything he's written. I haven't read everything he's written, but I just know already that I love it.
Yeah.
Um, so like Books of Blood, The Damnation Game, just he's just an iconic person.
Yeah.
I love him. I love Michael McDowell, who's another LGBT writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Michael McDowell. He wrote The Elementals and like The Amulet,
And like
Katie.
Beetlejuice that nobody knows about.
Yeah, he wrote the screenplay for
Right.
Beetlejuice. Yeah,
Right.
and I think his version was much darker
Mm.
than the original, like or the one that we ended up seeing in in theaters.
Oh,
But
where did you read that?
I read it in some like article, some like film article that in like the original script, I think Beetlejuice like tries to rape Winona Ryder's character.
What?
Yeah, and he's like more of like a horrific like demon from the underworld and like
Where
yeah.
could we read this?
Yeah, I'll have to send you the link because
Yeah.
I definitely read it in some like film related article about Michael McDowell and Beetlejuice, but I love him. And I also love this English playwright, author, director Philip Ridley. He's amazing. He's done a lot of great plays like the Pitchfork Disney. Um, Trying to remember the other titles. He's done really great films like The Reflecting Skin and Heartless. He's just like very surreal and very weird and very out there, and I definitely like look to him for a lot of inspiration.
That's cool. That's like those are good recommendations. Like I'm sure people are going to be looking that up. Uh, Here's a cool question I like. Eric, you've had a lot of acclaim and exposure in a short amount of time. Has that been difficult to manage, or are you taking it like a pro? Hi, Tim McGregor, by the way.
Hi Tim, thank you for coming. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting ride to say the least. I it's been would I change any of it? Would I like take back publishing things have gotten worse? No. Like I wouldn't change anything. Like I'm glad that the book has found readers. I'm glad that, I found an audience. Some days can be harder than others when you get certain feedback or when you get like, negative reactions. But like I'm very fortunate that I have a really supportive partner who kind of always talks me off the ledge and really gets me. And uh, there's nothing better than having someone in your corner that like for a fact has your best interest at heart and that would go to like the ends of the earth for you no matter what.
Yeah.
Like
So
there's really nothing better than that. So I really can't complain about anything. Like I really am like so fortunate that this book blew up the way it did. And um was I ready for it? Probably not, but
yeah.
I don't think I ever would have been completely ready for it.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, I feel like you have to go to school to like learn how to be like in the public eye, and be like
Yeah.
under scrutiny and be like under a magnifying glass. Like it's not something that's easily learned. Um
And
so
it's
I'm
just
def-
kind of hard knocks, right? Wouldn't you say it's just kind of like
yeah, and you just have to kind of go with the flow and you're going to make mistakes. I've definitely made mistakes, but I'm trying to just take it all in stride and just enjoy the journey. Like there's so much that I want to do in horror and publishing and film and theater. Like the fact that people that I don't even know are reading this book, things have gotten worse, and the fact that they're talking about it. Like
and seeing it in like Barnes and Noble and
yeah,
stuff,
I mean
like that's so crazy.
it's insane. It's literally insane, and it's just like I am so grateful at the end of the day. Like that book like really did change my life.
Mm.
Um, it really changed the trajectory of my career and how fast things started moving after like the amount of people that started like contacting me and like the level of people that started contacting me.
Yeah, you know what, Eric? Not to interrupt you, sorry. Um, there was like two things that struck me right away with the release of this book where I knew it was going to be different. Um, One was when you did the cover reveal on that day, and I like kind of left my computer for a while, and I came back and it was trending at like 1,000
Mhm.
views and all these retweets, and I was like, whoa, what happened? Like just in the span of like a couple hours, that thing was like rocketing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is something Ashley told me the other day where she was like, people outside of the horror community on Bookstagram were like buddy reading this book. Like she saw,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, because there's like niche communities on Bookstagram and they very rarely overlap. Like I don't follow anybody who's doing fantasy and sci-fi and stuff like that, or like
Sure, yeah.
YA books really. So she saw a person on Bookstagram talking about it, and then like she'd buddy read it with somebody else, like people we don't know and have never seen and has never interacted with like the horror community in any way.
Right, right. That's insane. That's
Yeah,
so crazy. And I
yeah,
mean, like I've seen reviews from folks on Instagram and Twitter from accounts that don't even follow me and don't like I don't follow them, but they've been giving me like really good reviews and it's like they don't owe me anything. Like they don't owe me like a good review. Like
yeah,
they're giving me their honest opinion and
yeah,
like that's really special to me.
yeah,
To be getting like that kind of really positive reaction is just it's like priceless.
yeah, especially from people who are like outside the genre, because I feel like there's just an understanding for really dark kind of twisted things among people who read that on a regular basis.
Hmm.
But for someone to step outside of what they're used to and dive into something, like go way into the deep end of the pool like that and have a good reaction is really powerful.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's been great, honestly. Like the feedback and like 90% of it has been super positive. Really like I've had the opportunity to meet really amazing people through this book. The people that I've reached out, like and just said that this book changed them in some way or that they loved the LGBT rep in it and that really meant a lot to them. Like I love getting messages like that. That's
Yeah,
just like
so
it makes me feel like I'm doing something meaningful, you know?
yeah, that's really encouraging and cool. Um, well, I think that we could totally like wrap it up for today. I mean, this must have just been like a high for you. I mean, I saw your book like 1,000 times today.
Yeah, today was so great, honestly. Like it was such a special day. So thank you for taking the time to celebrate with me. It was really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And this will be, on the Nightworms YouTube later for people who are in other countries or happen to miss it or in a commute home like my husband. Um, yeah, so it'll be available later. And then I just wanted to encourage everybody who reads Eric's work and reviews it and stuff to just go ahead and cross post on Goodreads and Amazon and, spread the good word. Like that's the way that these books keep getting traction for independent authors and small pub and stuff is just word of mouth between reader to reader on social media, TikTok, Goodreads, Amazon, Twitter, Bookstagram, Facebook, just tell
Yeah,
your
all
friends.
of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Oh my God, thank you, Sadie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to meet you too. We get to hang out in Merrimack
Me
probably.
too. I'm so looking forward to that. That's
I
gonna be
know.
great.
I'm really excited. My first like public outing, honestly. Like I've had tickets for Scares That Care since 2019 that
Wow.
didn't get used in 2020, that didn't get used this year. So this will be my first like outing.
Nice. We'll definitely have to hang out and chill. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And thanks everyone who showed up tonight and celebrated with us.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
You
We
had
really
all your great questions.
really appreciate it.
Okay, well, happy book birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to end the broadcast, but Eric, just stay put for just a sec.
Okay.